Hi there guys, so in this video we will see how you can create custom tables in WordPress, maybe for your plugin or for your next agency project or whatever you're doing. In case you're needing to create a custom table to store some sort of data, then this is the video you can use. Alright, so let me take you through what I have initially. So I have this demo menu page registered and this form created. Let's take a look at the plugin I have under the hood. So this is a plugin demo plugin, and I have separated all the code in 3 separate files so that it is organized and you can understand easily. So there's this main plugin file, that is the demo plugin.php, which registers the plugin and includes the other 2 files. So the other 2 files are the menu file, which we registered here, and this registers this menu and the page and the form, the AJAX part of it, the form for handling the AJAX, because this form uses AJAX and that is what we are going to use to store our data. So again, if you want to know how to create these forms, AJAX forms, etc., I also have a separate video for that. You can take a look at that. I will link it in the video description. Moving on, so we have this menu, a registration page, and which is what handles the menu page, and then the AJAX, which handles the AJAX event. And mind you that we are only hooking into the logged in event for that AJAX. Again, if you want to know what and how AJAX works, take a look at that video I just mentioned. All right, so I think we can begin at this point. So the first thing, if you're going to create a custom table or store anything in a custom table, such as in your plugin, what you'll need to do is register the table schema and everything at the activation hook, because you don't want to call your insertion methods or your database table insertions before the table is created. So that will essentially create an error. So what you don't want to do is hook into the register activation hook, and then the first parameter it takes is the main plugin file. Since we are already in the main plugin file, we can just call the constant file, and then we'll create a reference function. We'll call it demo create tables. Let's call that. And then let's create that function, demo create tables. Now in this function, the main thing that we are going to use is the WPDB class, which is the main, the primary way to handle custom or any database related queries in WordPress. So let's see how we can use that. So how you use that is by initiating with the global keyword global, and then the variable name, that is WPDB, right? So now we have the WPDB instance available to us. So the first thing is the table name, which we're gonna have, and so there's one thing to note here, that since WP has everything in the database prefixed with a WP table prefix, so you also have that available via the WPDB instance if you want to use that. In most cases, you would want to use that. So in this as well, we will hook to that, and it is at WPDB prefix. Now we'll concatenate and write our table name. So let's call it demo form. Let's call it demo form, because we also have a form here, and that's what we're gonna do. So demo form. Now we'll need to write our query, which will run via the SQL function. All right. So the query, let's write the query first, right? Actually, let's not write the query first. Let's take a look at the function which we're going to use in this. Okay, so function which we're going to use is called tb delta, and it is a crucial function for creating custom tables or updating them. So this is one thing that is also that also uses the WPDB instance under the hood. So this is more like a wrapper function over the WPDB function. The WPDB class. So let's use that. So the only parameter it takes is the query or queries. Actually, it also has this secondary parameter, that is execute, and which is by default set to true because you would expect it to execute it by default. But in case you want it to not execute for some reason or have a conditional execution, you would want to set that secondary parameter via condition or something. Right, so we will just create another variable called query so that it is well separated and organized. Let's create a query variable now. Now we'll use double quotes because we'd want to have interpolation in it. We'll be using the table name in it. So if you know a bit of MySQL, you'd know how to create tables. But then if you don't, I will also link a page where you can see how you can create a table in MySQL, etc. Right? Basically the documentation, etc. So create table, and the table name we have our variable interpolated. Now in an parenthesis, we will write each of our column schema in a separate line by line, right? So the first column is the ID column, and we will want it to be a medium int with a length of 9, and it will not be null, of course, and it should auto increment itself so that it stays unique, right? And the second column is the name column we will want to have because we are going with this form and all the form keys we have here, inputs basically, name, username, and email. So let's go for the name column. So the name column will be a tiny text because we don't want it to be any longer than a few 100 characters, right? So let's also give it not null because we don't want it to be null. Remember that if you set it to not null, it will always require a value. If you don't give it, it will throw an error. So the third column will be username, and again that will also be tiny text, not null. And fourth column is email column. We want this to be a varchar and in length 55. Now it'll also be not null because we don't want it to be null again. So and again the last column is registered at, because we'd want to have a value, a timestamp where we know when the user is registered. And there's a way to handle this automatically so that we don't need to enter the timestamp manually in the form. So let's see how to do that. We have the column name here, and then the type is datetime in MySQL format. And now we'll now set the default. This is how you will handle it automatically. We will set it to a default value, and then now we'll use the MySQL now function, which will take the current timestamp and put it into the row that when it will be inserted, right? And again, it will also be not null. And the last parameter in this create table function will be primary key. Remember, this is a required line, and you would want it to be set to a column which is unique so that the table knows which is the primary key, right? So we have our create table function ready, but it is missing one thing, that is the character set. So again, I'm not going to get into character set and what it is. Just know that character sets are a way to define your, are basically the schema part of your table rows and columns and how they should be defined. So you can look into what a character set collation is. But for now, we can just look into the WPDB character set, the default. So we'll just get that, whichever one it is set in the DB. And we will just use interpolation to again put the variable in place. Now we have the query ready, and we can simply run this. But if you were to run it right now, you will notice that there will be an error. So let me just go here. Actually, let me go to plugins and let me deactivate the plugin, because remember we have it set at activation hook, so it will only run when the plugin is activated. Let me deactivate the plugin. Let's activate it back. So if we were to activate it now, you will see that this function will run and the db delta function will also run. All right, so let's do that. And we have an error that is called to undefined function db delta. So this is expected because the db delta function isn't by default included everywhere, because it is not something that you would need all the time. So to include that, we will need to include a core file. So this is how you do that. You'll use require once, and then in parenthesis we will use absolute path constant, and again concatenation, and we'll say it is in wp admin and includes and upgrade.php. And now if you were to run it, it will work perfectly, right? Let's now take a look into the database, and it should have created a table with the name whatever is the WPDB prefix is for the site, and then demo underscore form, right? Let's take a look into our table app. We are using table plus, and let me go to the table, the database. This is WPDB, and all right, for some reason it didn't actually. So let's take a look into our debug log. Okay, so the last error is there's an error in our auto increment. Okay, so this is not auto increment, but this is auto underscore increment. So there's that, and this should now work. Let's again, we'll have to deactivate the plugin and activate it back so the activation hook runs. Let's deactivate it and then activate it back. Okay, should not have thrown any error again. Let's take a look into our database. Okay, here it is, our table, our custom table, wp underscore demo form. Right, so let's get back to our menu page, and let's get back to our code. So as you can see, this is how it runs. Now what you want to do is you also want to have a database version, so that in case you upgrade, in the whole plugin lifetime or at any point you might want to upgrade your database schema, the table schema. So in such cases, having a DB version will help. So how you do that is just use add option, which is WP helper function for adding options, saving custom options in the WP options table. So we can say demo form version, or demo form table version, let's call it that. And then the secondary parameter will be our version. So we'll just give it 1.0.1. Right. So that is that. Now when every time the activation hook runs, it will register our table as well as this option. Okay. So we have our table ready. Now we can get to the menu part, and we can see how we can hook into the AJAX function and insert the data from the form into our table. So if you were to take a look at the table right now, you'll see that it's empty, right? Let's refresh it. It's empty. Now let's take a look at the form here. If you were to provide anything, hello, maybe world, maybe hello at gmail.com or anything, and hit submit, it will redirect us back here, but it does nothing. If you were to refresh this table, it shows there's nothing here, right? So let's take a look at our menu page. So the menu registration is there and the menu renderer is here. You can see here, here's the form data. We have the inputs for name, username, email, and some of the required form security functions in WordPress. Again, if you want to know how to do this, there's a separate video and I have linked it in the description. All right. So let's get to the AJAX part. Since we are with that submit event, we are creating an AJAX event. Here is the AJAX data. I have already created the required variables and storing the data from the form in these variables. And this is also the same from that video. If you were to take a look into that video, that will show you how you can do this as well. So I'm just gonna assume that you have seen that video or you know that already, and I'm gonna move forward. All right, so now in this, again, we'll use the global keyword and use WPDB. Now, there's a WPDB insert function available via the WPDB class, which we will use here to insert our data in the table, which we just created. All right, so let's, so this takes two parameters. First one being table name. And then the secondary is the array or the value, the data that we will save in our table or row. All right. So this will be an array. Let's worry about that later. First, let's create the table name variable. And this will be the same as we did in the register activation hook. We'll have the prefix concatenated with the table name. Right now in the array, we would want to have all the required parameters that we'll have to provide manually. So the first parameter being name. Again, this should match with the schema that you set here. This name, username, email, etc. Right? So the name will be, I have already saved it in this variable name, and the username is username, and the email is email. Right. So means some formatting. So there's also another video that in that video I show you how I use these formatting tools. You can take a look at that as well if you want to use formatting tools, etc. All right. So we are inserting the data into the database from the form. Now let's take a look at the form. Let's try to save something. Let's call it test person, and then we will enter email test@user.com, password, and hit submit. Right. Now let's take a look at our table. It should have this. As you can see here, it has the ID of one which is auto-generated and the name test, username person with an email test@user.com. And the fourth one is registered at, which is also an auto-generated value which set the time to the current timestamp automatically. Right, so that's how you do that. And it is working as you would expect right now. But you can also add some additional conditions here, such as maybe you'd wanna set it under some sort of condition that if there's no data available or for some reason you don't want it to run, you can set it under a conditional or something. It's not required, but I'm just saying you can. All right. So, but it's a better thing. Definitely, it's a better step to add some conditional behavior in case you would know what kind of errors your plugin or your process can create. So you'd want to handle that. Sure. So we have it configured well here, the insertion process. Now that we have our form working in a custom table and we can save the data into the table, you want to know that how we can output that data somewhere or anywhere. For this demo, we will use this page itself to output the demo somewhere here. So let's take a look into our menu renderer function. Again, let's output our data below the form. So let's call it demo form renderer, not form renderer, demo save users. This is not according to the WP standards. You would want to have somewhere around something like demo show saved users. Right now this sounds like a readable function. All right, let's create that function here, demo. So I'm using this demo prefix because it's a set standard in WordPress, and every an experienced developer uses it, because you know how WordPress, the whole WordPress plugin thing is, because there are thousands of plugins available in the market, and you not want to clash your function with another plugin's function. So for just safety and security, you want to use a prefix so that it doesn't clash with any other plugin function, etc. Or better yet, you can use PHP namespaces, etc. if you know how to do that. All right, so let's just write a function demo save users. Again, we're going to use the global keyword and then the WPDB variable. We have our WPDB variable. We will use the table name. We'll use the prefix. I should have just copied it, but anyways, demo form. Now, to get the data from the database from a custom table is done like this. So let's save it in a variable first. Let's create a variable. We'll call it users, right? Because we are basically getting users. So via the WPDB instance, we have a function called get results. So what this does is it returns results from a query, and you can then basically do anything with that output, right? But if you were to take a look at that AJAX function, and we were using this insert, right? And all these functions do not return the output, but they basically return the status of that function. So if that function ran perfectly, or it had an error or something, right? So we will be using this get results function. Now we'll want to write our query. So in this case, it will be very simple, but for most cases, you want to have a better query. So you can take a look into MySQL documentations to how to write select queries. So in this case, I'm just gonna write select everything from the table name just created. Okay, we'll need to use double quotes in order to use interpolation. So we have our query, but there's one more thing that comes from WPDB, that is WPDB prepare. So what this does is sanitizes the query. So in case if we are injecting some sort of dynamic variable, you might want to be aware that it can be used to do some sort of SQL injection, etc. if we were to be using directly from some sort of user input, right? So using something like WPDB prepare function is a very well step. So let's use that, and WPDB prepare, and we can also say here that okay, it takes two parameters. The secondary one being the placeholders. You can use a placeholder here, and placeholder, how you use a placeholder is the same as you use a sprintf function or a vsprintf in PHP. So %$1s I'm going to use because All right, I'll tell you why. Percent the table name, right? And then we can switch to the single. All right. Now we have our users data. So let me tell you why I just switched to the single quotes, and then why I am using $1 instead of just %s, because it's a single string. So in the WPDB prepare statements, etc., when you use the placeholders and you use %s, it will be outputted in quotes. So, but in SQL queries, you might not want to have quotes in terms of table names, etc. So what you can do is use $1s, and that is the older way of using placeholders, and that will not output a quote. So that's why we are using that here. And okay, let's check it out. Let's test that we are getting our users. Let's just write a for each function which will output, go through the users variable. Let me just use user, and then we'll just var dump, basically var dump user name, right? Let's refresh it. Okay, we are having an error. Because you have an error, right? Syntax to use near. Repeat demo. Okay, we were missing the from part of it. Okay, might be a no when writing MySQL statements as well. So we just need to write here from, and this will again be the very same $1s, and that should be it. That should just work. All right, we are seeing our query, SQL query working as expected, right? So you can imagine such situations will be there when you will be doing a silly mistake, and such things will cause such situations. Anyways, moving on, we will be making it a bit more cleaner. So let's output this in a paragraph tag, and let's use the user user object, and we want to have the name here, and let's interpolate it in parentheses, actually in curly braces. I prefer that over the normal interpolation for some reason, because I've been using PHP like that forever. And we will want to have the email as well, so we will use the user object and email. Now if we were to refresh it, we will see that our users are here. Let's add a bit more HTML here, and then we'll call h1, maybe an h2, and in it we will say saved users, right? Let's refresh it. We have the saved users. Let's try to add one more user here and see if it all works. Second user, and username, and that will be second at user.com. Let's submit, and you can see that it is being outputted again. But you can imagine a scenario where if these users are not here, this will throw an error. So in such cases, you'd want to have something like conditional, which will check if the user's variable is set, and then you'd want to output your for each or your function. So how you do is you check if it's not empty, the variable users, you're gonna output that. And let's format it. All right, our code looks pretty good. Everything is set here. A few more things I'd like to add as a tip is, see, you now have the register activation hook, which you are using to create the tables. But then if you want to upgrade the schema, none of your users are going to go through this activation hook because this only runs when you activate the plugins. As you saw that we had to deactivate the plugin and activate it again to run the activation hook, because that is how it works. So in such cases, what you'd want to do is you'd want to write your upgrade hook into an action like plugins loaded, so that it runs every time. Or you'd want to also make sure that it only runs one time, maybe with that DB version, when you can use this option and upgrade once the once the option is upgraded, you'd not want to run that upgrade process over and over again. So there's that. So lastly, there's one more thing, that is the register uninstall hook, because I think this has been a forgotten hook in the WordPress plugin community, because more and more themes I have seen that are not using this hook and leave unused data, or leave miscellaneous data in the plugin or in the site DB, basically messing up the whole the site DB for users. So what you're gonna do is clean up the database before your plugin is uninstalled. So this will not run when the plugin is deactivated. So your plugin data will be safe. But in case the user want to deactivate and uninstall the plugin, in such cases you'd wanna have your data, custom data, deleted from the DB. So again, like we wrote the activation hook, we'll write the uninstall hook. We'll just create a reference function named demo, maybe delete DB data, and then we'll write that function here, demo delete DB data. And in this, as you'd expect, we will be using global WPDBs, and we will have the table name. Let's just copy the table name, etc. because let's not overdo it. All right, so the DB data, the table name is here. Now, the only thing that we need to run is using DB delta, we can just run our query, and the query will be, let's make that. And let's also require the upgrade file because it might not be available there, and throw an error. Let's write our query. The query will look like this. You will use drop table function from MySQL, and the table name, of course. The table name will be the table name, and that will be pretty much it. Let's try that. Hopefully that works. And you also want to delete this option we just created, this add option, or any database option you have created, right? So do is basically delete option and then the key of that option, right? And just do that. Now to take a look in our DB right now, we have our DB with the demo form table here, and in the options table we'll also have at the very end the demo DB version, sorry, not that, the demo form table version. So we should have demo, and we can just search for it. Let's search for it. Let's search. Right. Sorry. My bad. Select. Actually, let's just select. How do you want? Actually, let's not do that. Let's not get into that. We'll just see that if our table is being dropped, that is also that will also be done along with it. So let's run this. So as I told you, as I had told you earlier, that the reactivation function won't delete our data and won't run this function. So everything will still be available. So as you can see, it's still here. Now we were to delete this will trigger that. But remember that once we delete it, the whole code we just wrote is also gone. So I'm just going to skip that and hope for you to know how it works. And the database thing, this custom table creation is only intended for advanced use cases, and in most cases you can get away with the WP standard post meta or something like a CPT. So you'd not want to use a custom table, but in advanced cases where you definitely want to save some data in custom table, you can go for it. But yeah, all the stuff here, I will also link down some of the important documentation links to which you can use for further help in terms of this database functions, etc., available to you, and the MySQL syntax, etc. So there's that. I hope this video has helped you in some way or another, and if you really like this video or help me grow, please do subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great day.